lives. And we're not surprised by how ready people are for change, how much that affects our effectiveness in what we do, whatever it is. So that's the general subject of the morning. But would it be all right if I give a little bit about my background first? It has a bearing on how I get into this. Okay. I was born in rural Ontario, and we were quite poor. I remember when I was about 5 or 6, moving into a house that had electric lights, and but no indoor plumbing and no refrigerator. We had, well, what do you get for $15 a month rent? It wasn't that much. I started to school, had a great deal of difficulty in school. It was a rural school, and so things weren't diagnosed. I was severely dyslexic. I didn't know. Can you hear me back there? It's okay? Okay. Louder? I'm sorry. Louder? Okay. David is going to look after that. Okay. When I was 4, I was abducted and sexually abused and tortured and hung and left for dead. And I came back. Then when I was 8, my father was killed in a plane crash. That led to lots of changes. When I was 16, my mother had learned to drive and had a car, finally. All the time I was growing up, I had to pay my own way for anything. I saved for 4 years from this and that job that I had to buy a bicycle when I was 10. When I was 16, my mom was killed in a car crash by a drinking driver, and the family then was broken up. I had 3 younger brothers. So lots and lots of changes, often heavy duty. Lots of it not by my own doing, that's just what happened. Got into adulthood, got married, started having kids, went to university in there, and that marriage lasted about 10 years, and then I was separated from my kids. Got married again, my youngest brother committed suicide, and on it goes. And later on, I was teaching at the University of Guelph for 10 years, and I decided I had to do something different. I had to do something where I wasn't just getting a paycheck. It didn't make sense, but I had to do this. And I decided I would go into business. So I left the university, had a tenured position. People told me I was crazy, the usual stuff. And I went into business and did all right for a while. Then somebody blindsided me and lost everything, went bankrupt, lost the house, everything. So I had to pick, that was in my 50s by that time. And I picked it up again, and when I emerged, I was in private practice in psychology. We came west. I worked in a mental health center initially, and then I moved to a First Nations village up at the north, off the north end of Vancouver Island, where I worked for 5 years as a psychologist for the village. That was an exposure to just about everything. Then I got run out of town and came to Qualicum Beach, where I've been in private practice. And this year, I've started working every other one day every other week at the Sunshine Coast Health Center. That's why I have this on my label. And again, I'm working with people, this time men only, who are at the center dealing with addictions of one sort or another. So what I'm trying to say is that I've had to experience a lot of change all the way through my life. It just happened. And by the way, some things are stable. My wife and I, third marriage for both of us, just celebrated our 26th wedding anniversary this week. So okay. So when people come to us, whether it's to a treatment center in a group setting or in private practice, they're in all sorts of levels of readiness. Sometimes they're there because of external things. Wife is about to leave. I've lost my job. The drinking has got me into court, and I have to deal with this. I have to do something. Those are kind of external things. I had a guy, I know of a guy, this is a case where it borders on the internal, but initially it was external. Suddenly he finds himself very ill, and he has to have quadruple bypass surgery. His heart's just all blocked up. Okay, so he came to a friend of mine because he was scared. What's this about? But as he started to look at it, then the question shifted to an internal focus. Have I done something in my life that's led to my heart being all blocked up? And what the two of them worked on was, and they were using energy psychology therapy, what they worked on was all the times and all the ways that I have hardened my heart. So a metaphor. And 6 weeks later, when the surgery was to happen, they always run them through another MRI right before the surgery. They canceled the surgery. There had been such an improvement in his physical heart that they couldn't understand, the surgeons couldn't understand, that they canceled the surgery. Let's wait and see. This doesn't make sense. So there's a question that started with an external, it switched to internal motivation, but it all came together in a result. And of course, the treatment center, that's all the time. Often it's an external thing. Something has happened. And they get inside, and then things start to shift. Then it becomes internally motivated. In private practice, it's often just somebody, on the internal, somebody's feeling overwhelmed. Just too much, or they're depressed. Somebody just is feeling anxious all the time and wants to feel better. Someone else realizes that all this emotional stuff that's going on is interfering with their spiritual work or spiritual development, and therefore wants to do something about it so they can move on in the direction that they see as important. Okay. Pull out something here. So what I do with the group, when I'm referring to the treatment center group, is to get them going on this. I ask them to single out one thing, the most important thing they can think of, that they want to change, and that they wanted to change when they came to the Center for Help. So just to play around with that a little bit, what I would like you to do is just take a minute and write down we'll just translate it into this setting, but you know where I'm coming from. If there was one thing you wanted to change in coming to this conference, what would it be? Now, it doesn't have to be a profound psychological shift. Maybe the one thing you wanted to be different was that you learned something about this, or you wanted to be able to understand such and such. Those are intellectual things. I had one single thing that I initially wanted to happen to me in coming here. I wanted to make a personal connection with Stanton Peele. He's been somebody that I've been impressed with over time, but never thought I'd have an opportunity to meet. So I wanted that one thing. So that's on it. So just take a minute and write down something. Okay, now turn to somebody nearby you, and just just in pairs, and do a little exchange. What was it for you, and what was it for the other? Just share with somebody. You can do it in threes if you need to. It's okay. Okay. Come on back. Now, I'd like you to write something else down, and this might be a little more of a stretch in our context, but do it. Write down one thing that when you came here, you knew that you did not want to change. Okay, go back into your pairs and discuss that. Share what you came up with, or what the experience was of that. Just throw it out if you want.
Well, the first one was fairly easy for me because I came here quite purposefully. But one of the things I picked that I wanted to do was expand my professional network and my public
whether in the treatment center context or in private therapy. Is that me? Oh, yeah, okay. All right. I'm a little bit hyperactive, so I tend to need to dance around. Okay. With the clients, what happens is there seems to be always things that they don't want to change, and they're usually things that, well, at the treatment center, it's not that they don't want to change. It's not about sobriety. It's about a client will come in and, yes, I want help to not drink anymore. But I don't want to change my friends. I don't want to change my job. I don't want anything to be different in my marriage, except maybe to get along with my wife a little better. I don't want this. I don't want that. And so it's very restrictive. In the private therapy context, a person will come in who wants help with their depression, but she doesn't want anything to be different about her job. She doesn't want to look at her marriage. She doesn't want to look at what's happening to her adult children. She just wants to be less depressed. And this is very common, and it's okay. It gets them in the door. But the problem is, if they're stuck there, they'll soon get frustrated because you start bumping into stuff. You have to. Other stuff. And then, when they bump into other stuff, they get uncomfortable. Well, this isn't helping. I think I'm going to join the gym. Or I had one person do that. As soon as we started bumping into stuff, she says, I think I'm going to join the gym. She didn't come back anymore. That was early on. I didn't know what to do with that at the time. So what I do now, there's always this risk with I call them the one and only one issue client. They aren't going to last in a treatment center program unless we can get them opened up to facing a lot more stuff. The individual client, they may get some help with the one thing, and then they go away, and then they come back a year later or a couple of months later, and they want to deal with something else. They get a little bit of help, a session or two, they go away again. What it becomes essentially is a very expensive Band-Aid, because there's an unwillingness to look at the whole picture, or, as I say, go to the edge, face the bigger possibilities of what might happen. So what I do well, there's one more piece to that little exercise we did. Let's do it. Write down, what is the worst possible thing that could happen here? What would just be absolutely the worst possible outcome? What would that be for you? I'm not going to ask you to share this one. I would in the group, but I'm not going to ask you to share it here. Does that feel uncomfortable to do? Yeah. Okay. That's the point. That is the point. Okay. What I do in the what happens is that's just a little exploration of going to the edge. What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, with the private clients, the worst thing that could happen is, well, my husband will leave me, or I'll have to leave, or I'll have to leave my job, or the whole world could fall apart. That's the kind of the what I want them to look at. Now, here's where I go with that. I get into a little bit of the nature of change itself. What happens? And what I do in the group isn't exactly the same as what I do with the individual clients. And the individual clients, I'm still doing it. It'll be often bits and pieces as needed, rather than in a more formal workshop setting. But it's still there. We look at the inevitability of change. And the easiest way to see the inevitability of change is to look at your life, the life cycle. You're not the same as you were 10 years ago, are you? You've evolved. You're not the same as you were 6 months ago. You've learned new things, there are new concepts, new things going on, new feelings, new spiritual dimensions. We keep changing through life. It's easy with couples because they're sitting there pointing the finger at each other, and you are reacting to your husband the way he was a year ago, not the way he is today. And he's saying, you don't understand, you don't understand. And he's reacting to you the way you were some time ago, not the way you are now, because you're different now. That's getting out of touch. The change keeps coming and coming and coming. That's the nature of change. We're all changing. I know one business executive has a sign up on his wall that he has in the boardroom. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. I like that. Okay. So the first thing about change is inevitable. In the treatment center program, you're here, things are going to change. That's what's going to happen. You can't help it. No matter how much you fight, there'll be changes. Even if you leave today, you're not the same as you were a week ago when you arrived. And that keeps evolving. But people are afraid of change, and that's why I want to go through this. So let them understand it. It happens anyway, and we can do something about that. Okay. The second thing about change is, after its inevitability, is that change is unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. If we change one thing, something else changes, and then something else changes, and something else changes. When I had a period in my life of very heavy, destructive drinking. And my wife was very worried about me because I was drinking a lot. I was, about 20 ounces of pure alcohol a day, so it was significant. And I didn't get hangovers, and I was able to do my work, and I had enough sense not to drive if I was drinking. I never got drunk. So what's the problem? I enjoyed it. Well, it was actually affecting my health, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that. So my wife was very concerned. You're drinking too much, Neill. I mean, this is dangerous. And then you're taking tranquilizers, and that's not good. Okay. But I didn't know. There had been no drinking in my family particularly. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about this stuff. Anyway, I kept getting sick, and I went off to the Mayo Clinic, and lo and behold, all the physical symptoms were working properly, but it seemed that I was developing an allergic reaction to alcohol. So, as I said, I was pretty naive. I didn't know it was going to be hard to quit, so I just quit. Okay, what I had last night, that's it. So I stopped. And I didn't have any particular problem with that. So I probably wasn't physically addicted, although emotionally it was just so much a part of my life that I didn't give it much thought. Where that came from, I didn't realize until much later. The beginning of the heavy drinking came by being separated from my kids. It's easy to see in retrospect, but I never made the connection until some years later. Okay, my wife was greatly relieved. About 6 months later, one day she yelled at me. She said, "You're ruining my lifestyle." I said, "Huh?" I said, "Well, you know, we used to go out to dinner and drink, and now I said, "It's no problem. I can't drink, but you can certainly order a bottle of wine. There's not an issue for me." And there wasn't. I still went to the faculty club for lunch and so on, only I didn't drink alcohol. This was a thorn in the flesh for her, it turned out. We got marriage counseling, and then she left. So everything changed as a result of my stopping drinking. It wasn't predictable. I mean, I had no idea this would happen. Other things happened too. Relations with kids improved. My wife left. I faced some things about my job that I didn't really like and decided I was going to make a move. And then I met Eileen, and right at the point that she was moving 300 miles away. Anyway, 2 years later, I was living in a different city. I had left my university job. I'd gone back to university myself. I was remarried. I'd taken on a bunch of stepkids. Life was different, but not in any predictable way. Just simply not. That's the nature of change. So when somebody says to me, "But I don't want to change," I hit it right directly. I said, "Well, you know, anything can happen. Are you ready for that? No, your marriage might not survive, if that's what you're worried about. Probably will, but it might not. Your child might leave home. Maybe your child will go with his dad. That's a possibility. Can you face that?" So getting people to face and that's why I do this little exercise, what's the worst thing that could happen? Getting people to face the possibility of changes that they cannot predict is an important piece of getting them open to looking at what all they might want to change, not just sticking to one issue. What might be different? Could be anything. So change is unpredictable. And then the next one, I really like, change is irreversible. When you make changes, oh yeah, you can go back to drinking, but it's not the same. You've got a whole different consciousness about it. It won't be the same. You can't go back to being a happy drunk. You could go back to being an unhappy drunk. You could go there, but you can't go back. And people say, "Well, I just want to get back with my wife to where we were getting along together." So you can't. You can go to a new place where you're getting along together, but you can't go back. Change is irreversible because you're changing all the time. Everything changes. Now, okay, that's the psychoeducational component that's in there. Now, I don't lay it all on at once, but and the more I can get the people to acknowledge those kinds of things themselves, the better. And everybody can think of changes that they made in their lives that then led to a whole lot of other changes that they weren't expecting. Anybody can think of that if they've been around for a while. Okay. So what I run across, if we look back and look to a deeper level at the issue of change, it often comes down to a fear of change. Just fear, just basic fear, which is at the root of most of the negative emotions anyway. So that's part of, going through the psychoeducational component is part of getting them to that place. Now, I learned for myself, I guess I was in my early 30s, I was actually during my drinking period, that anything that I change, that I want to change, that if I want to do something that I'm interested in that's going to lead to changes, in the long run has worked out for the better. What I used to say that I found that it's in my best interest to do what I'm most interested in doing. If that means leaving a tenured position, that's what it is. Or going for the big deal, or doing this or doing that. So I've done lots of different things. And going to the edge, or taking other people to the edge, involves a certain amount of being willing to do it yourself. Well, I believe it involves a big component about that, but we'll get back to that. So after my business had collapsed, and we'd lost our house, although we were still in it, and I was in bankruptcy and unemployed, the business was gone. My wife had taken on temp work to try to hold things together, but we weren't quite making it. I got into my head the notion that I really had to go to, we were living in Ontario, I really had to go to an intensive 1-week-long workshop in California. It was an education workshop. And I really had to go. I got to go. Got to go. So I called up the person in Toronto who was organizing the registrations, and I said, I got to go to this conference. I got to go to this workshop. What do I have to do? And she says, well, make an appointment, come in, fill out an application form, and bring $3,000. Okay. After lunch next Tuesday, I'll come in. This is a Thursday. Well, I had $300 that I got from somewhere. And that was it. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I made the appointment. And Monday morning came. I still had the $300. The appointment was the next day. I was like, oh, what the heck should I do here? But anyway, I was thinking about canceling it, but I didn't. Canceling the appointment. I got to go. I just had that feeling, I have to go. I have to do this. Monday afternoon in the mail, there was a check for $2,700 from a company I didn't recognize that had apparently tried to refund a credit card, $2,700, for some purchase I didn't recognize that I'd made. And since the credit card no longer existed in the bankruptcy, they mailed me the check. So I went to California. And And when I was leaving, I said to Eileen, I said, I don't know what's going on here. I don't understand this. Something really important is going to happen, but I don't know what it is. I might have to sit on a mountaintop for a year. I don't know what it is. Now, she's a wise lady. And she said, and I'm sure she was quaking in her boots, but didn't let on. She said, do whatever you need to do. Just go. All right. So I went. And what I was there for, I had a profound spiritual experience, an awakening, a connection with God after 25 plus years of more or less atheism. Just boom, I skipped the belief stage. I went from the there's nothing to a knowing. I skipped the belief stage, so that was all right. So that's what I was there for. It had nothing to do with the conference, but that was one of the times, that's an example of not just going to the edge, stepping off the edge for whatever's going to happen. I've done that enough times in my life that I know that I'm going to be okay. There may be some temporary pain, but it's going to be okay. So, well, anyway, that's so getting clients to the edge involves helping them to understand what the change is, being a model of it, and if possible, getting to them to the place where I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get the maximum I can out of this. Whatever happens, I know I'm going to be okay. Yes?
So do you use your life, do you do enough self-disclosure to use your life as a model for clients? Or do you...
Actually, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Did everyone hear that? Okay.
Because as an old guy, I'm with you.
Yeah.
The question is, in a professional context, I tend towards self-disclosure.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that's workable. You know, there's different schools in it.
I know. Well, fortunately, or unfortunately, I didn't have proper training. There's a lot of things that people get in graduate school now that weren't when I went through, that just weren't there. And a lot of what I've learned, of what I do, and I'm good at what I do, but a lot of it I've learned. I've just learned. Got out there and tried things and learned it. So coming to a conference like this is just extremely affirming because I'm seeing, really big names, good guys, and they're talking about this is what you should do, or this is what seems to be working. Well, I knew that, but I didn't know where I got it somehow or other. So it's affirming. If you don't have all the formal courses and this and that, so how do you know what you know and what you don't know? So back to the question of disclosure. I've never bought into that notion that you shouldn't disclose. You shouldn't be stupid about it. It's going to vary tremendously from client to client. You're going to be much more formal if you're dealing with a borderline than, again, it's a kind of an intuitive thing. But the principle that I go with is this, that, and I've believed this for a long time, is the quality of the healing, of the quality of the changes that a client goes through with a therapist have much more to do with the quality of the consciousness of the therapist than with the quality of the techniques that he or she uses. And if a client is going to know about my consciousness, they've got to know something about me. So it just comes in as needed. And, and there's an exchange.
I'm sorry, would you just repeat what you just said, the quality?
Okay. Good therapy is more about the quality of the consciousness of the therapist than about the quality of what he does. Or another way of putting it in very simple terms, good therapy is more about who you are than what you do. Question?
Yeah, can you just speak about a little bit more about intentionally role modeling courage as a therapist that doesn't rely on self-disclosure?
There are always things in one's life that one can disclose. Maybe it was getting up the courage to go back to university. I mean, who cares if you disclose that? I mean, you can always find things where you've stepped over the edge, or you have experiences that other people had, where they were afraid to make a move, did, and then there was a blossoming after that. You can give examples besides your own examples to lead. See, the idea, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes, of course. Yeah. That's what, when I'm working with a client, I very quickly am getting into what their strengths are and where they're going and what they think about life. Interesting with people who come in that identify themselves as depressed. I ask them, well, what do you envisage for your life 5 years out from now? What's your life like? And over and over and over again, there's a long pause, and I said, well, I'm just getting a blank. There isn't anything. And what I have found I've had far more success with treating depression by helping them to create that picture of the future than I have with any of the backwards-looking stuff, which works too. But it almost seems that there has to be a future, there has to be a direction at least to get people out of those stuck places. So, yes.
I guess one of the things I'm thinking about is that if the art of it is eliciting from the client themselves,
Yes.
how do you artfully use your life other than, so you said state of beingness, which I totally agree with. The question is, would you use your own story like you did with us as a pump trial, or would you not? And to what degree are you there as sort of a neutral question, or to what degree are you there as like a fellow
Traveler.
traveler?
Much more the fellow traveler. See, part of the job of getting people to go to the edge, to look at the worst case, to realize they're going to survive, then pull down and get to work and face whatever comes. I mean, that's what I see our job as being. Part of that is inspiring them to want to go for it. Now that's not technique. That's being. That's being there. That's being aware of them, being connected to them, learning from them. If I'm not learning something from my clients, I'm doing something wrong. I got to learn. I don't mean just intellectual stuff. I got to get something. That's my yardstick of whether I'm on the right track. I got to be getting something. So, in that sense, it really is a fellow traveler thing. But they're out front. They're taking responsibility. They're going for it. They're hanging around for a bit longer to get it. And the results are, I mean, sometimes they're just, I mean, again, it's not predictable. I had one guy come to me who was was referred by an agency, so because he didn't have any money, he was on welfare, and we had 5 sessions. I had to ask for a 6th session, so we had 6 sessions. And he had been, he was a tradesman. He had an old truck, but he hadn't been able to go out of the house for 5 years. He'd just sit on the couch, turn the TV on, not even watch it, and just sit there all day, day after day. That was his life. He'd gone to mental health. They weren't able to do anything for him. They said he was probably bipolar. I didn't see that, but he was really stuck. Now, somehow or other, whatever we did, he came out of it. And, we were doing energetic clearing and stuff. He may have had some kind of an attached entity. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure what I believe about that. But the fact is his aura had a great big bulge on one side. And so we dealt with that. We had our 6 sessions, and that was it. Well, he started using his truck for odd jobs. Within a few months, he was back to full swing running his little contracting business. And that was several years ago. He's doing fine. But he got out of a 5-year extreme slump. Well, the person that was sharing the house with him also came to me after that, also on welfare, also not having, in her case, she couldn't be around people because she picked up their energy so much that it just made her sick. And so she couldn't do anything. Nice person. She did a little bit of part-time work in a store, but that was as much as she could be exposed to the public. She couldn't go to a meeting. That was just overwhelming to her. Well, we had 5 sessions, and she was ready to go for it. Anything. Now, sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. In that case, about the 4th session, she came in and she said, well, and this person is clairvoyant and very intuitive, and anyway, that's why she takes on so much energy. So she said to me, well, she said, I'm aware of all my past lives right back to the beginning. And I have been sexually abused over and over in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And I want to deal with that. And also, I want to reestablish my connection with the divinity. And we have to do it in this session. Now, there was somebody who was ready to go for it. We did it. And we had one more session to tidy up. She's flying. She's back working full time. She's become a Reiki master. She's able to handle other people's energy, she's going. But she was ready to go for it.
What'd you do?
What did I do?
Tell me about that session.
I used energetic clearing on all of the past sexual abuse. Now, I'm not going to get into energy psychology. That could be a topic for another talk, but I do use a lot of it. Check out the website for the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology as a start. If you pick up my card, I've got a link on my website to that. I think it's energypsych.org is the actual website. Yes?
I hear you saying a lot that if the therapist transmits or transmutes values of, I believe you can change, and I'm here to journey along with you to change. It sounds like Randy Sorensen has a book.
It's not technique, but it's what I do. In fact, my my business card, I have helping capable people who feel stuck. that's what I do. And I'm not sure what I do, but people get unstuck. And I think a lot of it has to do with the presence, just being there, taking them in, taking everything in.
I'm not sure the change is always a good thing. Like some people get themselves to self-destruction and then in order to revive,
I don't know whether you're saying exactly this, but a lot of people have a drama hook. So if you're finding your marriage boring, take up skiing, don't have an affair. That's the way I put it. So yeah, of course we talk about that, the changes. If somebody wants to do something really major, I think I'll just leave my wife and travel or whatever. What I say is, don't change anything now. Wait till we've gone through this. Let yourself get clear, and then if you have to leave your wife, do so. But don't do it in the context of all this turmoil. Do it when you're calm and clear. And so I'll pull them back from that kind of stepping off. Let me end with a funny little story about that, exactly that. This workshop that I went to in California, one of the things we had to do was sign an agreement that we would make no major decisions for 30 days after the workshop was over. We had to sign it. No major decisions. So one of the workshop leader got a call from one of the participants after the workshop, but a few days after the workshop, says, so-and-so that was in our group, yeah. Well, he has sold his business, and he's bought a sailboat, and he's planning to take his kids out of school, and they're going to sail around the world. That's the plan. This is like about 3 or 4 days after the workshop ended. So Robert, the workshop leader was Robert Kiyosaki. You may have heard of him. So Robert called the guy up. He was in Australia. Called him up and said, "What's this I hear? You've sold your business?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, he was an accountant for. I sold my share. I made a really good deal. I'm really happy. Yeah, I've done that. And I bought a sailboat, and I'm taking my family, and we're going to sail around the world for 2 years. That's what we're going to do." And Robert says, "Do you recall that you signed an agreement that you would make no major decisions for 30 days until after the workshop was over?" There's a long pause. He says, "Well, yes, but those weren't major decisions." So yes, it does require quite a bit of pulling back. But that's why I go to the edge, So you see the possibilities, and then pull back and feel safe to get to work and face whatever comes. Anyway, that's all I have. Article for the newspaper called Going to the Edge. It's for clients, and I use it as a handout. There's a bunch of copies out on the Sunshine Coast table. Help yourself to my card, which on the back of it are the URLs of my blogs where I publish these little articles. Feel free to use them if they're helpful to you and your clients in any way.